really pumped to be talking to Glen Henry today, who I originally learned about and became a fan of last year when Bryce Dallas Howard's movie about fathers came out. So I'm really excited to talk to him today, and he was such a star in that film. And if you haven't seen that, you should totally go and watch that, because Bryce did an incredible job with that film, and it's an emotional and moving. I watched it pregnant last year, and the tears were flowing. So I'm gonna get Glen on here, and we're gonna talk all about being a stay-at-home dad. Even right now, he's no longer a stay-at-home father, but he was in the movie and has experience with it. So I sent, yay, hi.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's doing pretty good, yeah.
Awesome. I saw you got an award this weekend, so congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It was amazing. The Dad Gang and Ciroc, they paired together and got a bunch of dads together, and just wanted to thank us for contributions to Black fatherhood and changing the narrative and stuff like that. It's just been amazing. So yeah, I just got back yesterday.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk about fatherhood. I was just saying a little bit about originally how I learned about you was from the film last year, and Bryce kind of put me in touch with you. But it was such an incredible look into being a stay-at-home dad. I know you're no longer a full-time stay-at-home dad, but there are so many dads, who are stay-at-home dads, and I think that shining a light on that was such a beautiful thing to do. And as you do so much in the work of fatherhood,
Yes,
um,
ma'am.
and so I kind of want to go back a little bit, because I know that that you have a ton going on, especially now, and your wife is doing a lot of the stay-at-home parenting.
Yes.
But I want to go back to when you were a stay-at-home dad and when you made that decision, and what that process was like, because typically, people are more stay-at-home moms, and now in this generation, there's more stay-at-home dads. But I kind of want to go back to that decision and time in your life.
Yeah, well, that time was unforgettable. So there's so many things I take away from that season of life, and really trying to pour into a lot of the men that I'm meeting, because they're now walking into that season, and it's very hard, a lot for mothers and fathers. There's just not a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, because every day seems like you're starting from scratch.
Right.
And so, yeah, I love talking about this. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be a part of this. So I appreciate you.
Oh, great. So let's go back. I love when you say that season of your life in that chapter. So let's go back to when you decided to be a stay-at-home dad, and what that was like for you.
Yeah, so basically, I started out in hip hop, so I do music and I make music, and that was how I was making money, as well as having a full-time job. But my full-time job wasn't really, making a whole bunch of money, and so we live in California, and to get childcare was like $400 a week, and so we were about to have another baby, and we knew that if we had another baby, that would double,
Mhm.
and so. My wife was like, yo, I think it'd be a good idea for, like, we have two boys. We're about to have another boy. I think it would be awesome to see what it would be like, from our boys to experience love coming from a man. And I was like, okay, and she's like, yeah, well, I like being a stay-at-home dad. Like, how do you feel about that? And I was like, I don't know, I don't like it at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's a terrible decision. And the reason is because, like, it seems boring, and, like, like, it seems easy is what I said. And so little did I know, like, I would step into this, like, overwhelming, like, tiredness. I'm emotionally tired. And so making that decision was kind of like, my expectations were like, man, I'm just gonna kill it. And then when I spent like my first 24 hours alone with both babies, it was like, I had to, like, stop and catch my breath a lot. It was kind of scary too.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's it's funny, because that your reaction was it's going to be easy or it's going to be boring, because it is. I think for a lot of people who don't have experience of being with a kid full time. I mean, I see it sometimes with my siblings when I give them my daughter. They're just like, oh my God, this is so exhausting. But then you being at home with your wife having a baby on the way and then two little ones. What were their ages when you were first at home?
So when I was first at home, the baby was 3 months, and then my oldest was 2.
Hmm.
And so it was intense because like the tears are constant. It's like you go from like tears to like just bodily fluids all day. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And it's just like you just stop caring. Um, you just have to make it through the day.
Yeah. So how was that for you? I mean, that's an adjustment from being at a full-time job and then being full-time at home with two very little ones.
Hmm.
And, obviously it's mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausting. And how did you balance that shift for yourself and adjusting to that new role?
I had to get a lot of advice. Once I started sharing like a video or two on Instagram, people would kind of be like, yo, you really need to get on a schedule, like sleep schedule, like play schedule, everything was on a schedule. And so that was kind of the first things first was like, you wake up before the kids, you get breakfast ready, and then, you plan everything around the naps. So my kids would take 2 naps a day. So I knew I had to tire them out before the first nap around 10 o'clock. And then they would take another nap around like 2 or something like that.
Mhm.
And it was all about getting on a schedule, but you didn't really know whether or not you were doing a good job because no one patted you on the back. So it was a lot of like loneliness and kind of like the sense of like, am I capable? Am I equipped?
Right.
My wife should be here. When I go to the park to play with the kids, no one talks to me. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like mom's there and they're kind of like, what is this guy doing here?
Yeah.
It was very, very strange, lonely, and I definitely needed to get on a schedule. And once I did that, it became a lot easier. And but it still was difficult.
Hmm. And what was that like when you're going to the park and you're the only dad that's coming there with your kids
So
and
awkward.
yeah.
It's just awkward. It's like you don't belong. It seems like you don't belong.
Hmm.
Um, and what's interesting about it though is that when I was there with my children, a lot of the other kids would be like, toss me up in the air, play with me. You know what I mean? Like blow bubbles for me and stuff like that. And so it was interesting to know that like even like just even a father figure at the park was still valuable for other kids to see. So even though I didn't feel like welcome by the moms, you know what I'm saying, or by the community at large, there was still like I still felt affirmed being there.
When you told your friends or your family that this was something that you were going to do and this was a change, because it's obviously a big decision to quit your job and to become a full-time stay-at-home parent, um, for a mother or for a father, what was the reaction from people around you and your community around you to making this change in your life?
I have a lot of artists in my friend group, so a lot of people they were kind of like, oh, that makes sense. Well, you got to work pretty hard and you got to go on tour, you got to do this. Family was just kind of like, good for you. You know what I mean? Like I had some really like key players that were really supportive. My sister was super supportive and my dad was supportive, but other people were just kind of like, when is he going to get a real job? When is he going to get out of this stage? And there was quite a bit of just like reluctance, and I understood because I never saw it either.
Mhm.
I think like and definitely didn't see it on video. You know,
Right.
um, I read a lot of blogs about it, and that was pretty much it. But um, for the overwhelming community was supportive because I spent a lot of time with friends and creatives, but those naysayers voices are very loud.
Mhm.
They flood you with like this feeling of inadequacy, and they it's just so loud. I don't know why, like, people's disconnect or challenge against you seems louder than the cheers, but it often happens.
Mhm. And how did you deal with that negativity?
I mean, I really couldn't do anything but keep,
Yeah.
like my kids still needed me every day. My wife, still depended on me to uh, to do what I was doing. But what was interesting was when I started to kind of share my story via like videos on Instagram and stuff like that. there was a overwhelming amount of support
Mhm.
because uh, I, like people just didn't see it often, and then they would just encourage me, like, hey, like my son and my went through that stage too, and it's super normal. This reminds me of when I was younger, or my dad. I wish I had a dad like you, or stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like it was super encouraging. So uh, overall, like I think it worked out because I was so transparent about that decision, and so a lot of it is more about like just seeing like a man be present. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
a lot of people need that proof, you know,
Mhm.
especially like being a black father. Like people just needed to see that I was just chilling, and it wasn't that I was doing anything spectacular, but I was just being a dad. And so like normalizing just regular life for black people was something that I really felt was important. And it also, it's like this thing with scripture, you know what I'm saying? Like having the father be present,
Yeah.
um, is really, really valuable. And it taught me a lot of lessons about even how I pursue my own father.
What lessons did it teach you about that?
Well, when I come home from like a long stint of working on the road or something like that, and I make myself present, my children, I open the door, my children run to my feet. And it's this thing about when the father makes himself present, the children pursue. And so as a son, I'm thinking like, when's the last time I really pursued my dad? Like when's the last time my dad has kind of reached out and said like, hey, I'd like to hang out. When's the last time I pursued him? And so there's this thing, it's kind of like, I'm like, dang, man, like my dad doesn't pursue me or whatever. And my sister's like, you really should fight for the relationship you want with your father. You know what I mean? And so those challenges and those conversations uh, has inspired, my children have inspired me to be a better friend, employer, brother, son, like in all ways, just by the way they treat each other and treat me.
Mhm.
So I've done a lot more learning than I have teaching.
That's so beautiful. I love that idea. I think, I'm a new mom, but even just in my 10 months of being a new mom, it's like parenthood, and it teaches you so much about yourself, but also about the relationship that you have with your own parents, and reflecting on your childhood, and maybe wanting to have different relationships with people or with your family members moving forward based on what you're now experiencing, and having that adjustment for you of being at home and being, the present parent, the full-time parent, and also having these experiences of, going to the park and being the only dad there. It's a really incredible thing. And it also reminds me of whenever I would always, growing up, whenever my mom or we would be around and we would talk to another mom, they would always say, I'm just a mom. Like if somebody said, what do you do? And they would say, I'm just a mom.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up that my mom, because I didn't really, there being a stay-at-home dad wasn't, and I think that, that's why shining a light on it, what you're doing with your video content is so incredible, is because it's shining this beautiful light on what it is to be a stay-at-home father, because there isn't so much of a history of that. And I
Hmm.
remember my mom always saying to so many women, don't say just a stay-at-home mom, say you're a mother, because
Hmm.
that's the hardest job of them all. Did you
Hmm.
feel that there was a similar feeling with that, with being a stay-at-home dad, of you feeling like, oh, I'm just a stay-at-home dad? Or were you very confident in your delivery of, I'm a dad, I'm a full-time dad?
Um, that question is very deep, Catherine. There's no such thing as just a anything, because
Mm-hmm.
we often are defined by our roles. And I think my wife is going through that very sensitive, similar season because, she was explaining that, motherhood can be one of the biggest identity thieves.
Mm-hmm.
It turns you into a relational person instead of this other person. And so like I rely instead of this individual. And so I rely on my wife as my wife and a mother to my children, but she's also has her own womanhood and identity that she wants, is so polished now. It's so different. And every time you have another child, you become a different person.
Right.
You have different emotions and different experiences. And so it is definitely something that I have fought through in saying like, yeah, well, I'm a dad and I just do dad stuff, but I've always kind of been this like jack of all trades, you know what I mean? So I've always kind of dabbled in different things, um, to say like, I'm not just a father, like I'm a teacher, I don't just teach my children how to, like letters and numbers and colors and all that stuff, but I also teach them how to think. I also teach them how to control their emotions. I also teach them how to reconcile with each other. I teach them how to, um, before you come to me complaining about what happened with your brother, did you address him? Yeah. Did you ask him? Did you tell him that you didn't like the way it felt when he hit you? Like, because you're just gossiping to me. Like, I can solve the problem, but so can you by just letting him know that you did not enjoy that experience. I really believe that like the Lord is giving me such a like connection through my experience through fatherhood because it's changed and defined, you know, how I experience everything. So, like, of course, you're a patient father. Like the babies are adorable. How could you not be patient with a baby? You know what I mean? But are you an impatient like pedestrian? Are you a patient brother? Are you a patient whatever? You know what I'm saying? So it goes beyond just your role, and it becomes like, what kind of human are you? You know what I'm saying? And so if we allow our experiences through parenting to transfer into the rest of our lives, we'll end up not just being fathers, but father figures. We'll not just be, parents. We'll be pillars in communities. And so I think that, of course, like those one phrases, those words, can connect you to other people and just say, hey, I identify as this. But really, it's like, what is that thing you are experiencing allowing you to experience in other areas? You know?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's it. That totally makes sense to me. I think it's such an incredible thing that it's also probably gives you different perspective of what your wife might be going through now as far as the identity and being at home, with 4 kids. It gives her understanding of what you went through, but also now you understanding and also, grace around what she might be going through and that change of identity as well.
100%. And I think that was the best thing because I am able to just look at her and be like, you need a night off. Bye. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or like if she says, hey, I want to do this, I totally understand, and it has allowed me to have like grace and understanding in this whole season because uh, it's harder. I had two, she has four, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, and they span across different ages and, they have like, I used to be a stay-at-home dad, so I was there all day. Now that I work like part of the day, um, my children are like, you're not home enough. You know what I'm saying? You work too much.
Right.
Now I'm actually around a whole lot, but because they used to experience me every single hour of the day, they don't like how much I work.
Mhm.
And so even my wife coming to my protection and being able to say, Dad is actually doing exactly what you're supposed to do, you know what I'm saying, and cover me, it's just it's an amazing shift in perspective. And so it's definitely been something that I've been speaking to a lot of men about who have wives who stay home. And I just kind of let them know, like, hey man, like if all the children survive, then she did her job. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right. Yeah.
you ain't gotta like she doesn't have to have everything done and food don't gotta be and everything doesn't have to be clean. Like everybody survived. You have no idea what she had to get through to make that happen.
Right. Do you feel dad guilt? Because mom guilt is such a big topic, and I think especially on social media is this, mom guilt, mom shame. Do you feel that as a father?
Yeah, of course. Every time I get on a flight, I cry a little bit.
Mhm.
Anytime that I'm working and doing stuff like it's very very hard. But I think what I know that we're not going to be in the season forever, and so I think the like of course you want to be present in all seasons, but I think the season that is kind of hardest for a child is like right around like 8 to like 15, like
Mhm.
that, like 7 year, like it's very it's very sensitive and there's a lot of other people's opinions coming along. And so I feel like I'm trying to work so that that season can just be more free, for mentorship. Um, but yeah, I definitely feel a lot of guilt and, but I don't allow those things to, um, get in front of the mission, uh, and that's to equip fathers. I understand how important it is to have a proof of a good dad.
Yeah.
Um, And so, not to say I'm like the best dad in the world and anything like that, but at least you could be better than me by just watching what I do, you know. And so I share the good and the bad, you know.
I want to go to talk a little bit about when you first started deciding to share your journey with fatherhood, because I think that was really highlighted so well in obviously the movie that came out last year, and then also on your social media, you know document all of your experience of being a stay-at-home dad and also just fatherhood now in general, which is I think so needed and so important and amazing for new dads as well. Can you talk a little bit about what made you decide to do that, to start documenting your experience of being at home with children, and also it seems like that offered huge support for you in the community that said to you, you know, put them on a schedule or like do this, do that. Can you talk about your decision to do that?
Yeah, it was a tough decision because um, you know, like my wife's very private. You know, she doesn't
Mm,
like to share anything. You know. Um, but it was that like I never wanted to be a dad, you know, until I saw a good father. And so a lot of us, we really don't know what we want to be or what we want to do until we see someone do something.
mm,
Uh, you know, the world records were like, you know, way slower until people started breaking faster records. And now that we know that it's possible, we just keep trying to push the limit. And so my thing is like, how many different platforms do you know that are teaching people how to be mothers and fathers? I mean, they teach you how to be financially stable. They teach you how to, you know, we have schools for all different types of things, but not for the basic things in life,
mm,
which is most importantly parenthood, because family is foundation of everything. It could be a good foundation or a bad foundation. And so to teach people and usher people into fatherhood and motherhood is the greatest thing I think that I can do, you know? And so documenting my journey uh, has, I mean, the reason why I did it was very much like, man, you know, I don't know how long I'm gonna live. You know what I'm saying? And when I when I do pass away, I would want my children to have more than just photos. You know, I would want them to know like what our life was like. Um, so documenting that was part of that, and then it was also about providing other people with proof. But what has happened since then, it's like, you know, you have a lot of kids that just hit me up and like, man, I'm 12 years old and, you know, I never wanted to be a father and now I can't wait. You know,
no.
you have people that are like, I haven't talked to my dad in 8 years. And because I watched one of your videos, I gave him a call. Thank you.
Wow.
You know, we're about to drop a documentary this week on my channel. But, you know, there's a gentleman there and he was talking about how, like, you know, he asked his girlfriend to have an abortion because he didn't want to be a dad. And, you know, he ended up like Googling what is it like to be a father and stumbling on my page and then like having a change of heart. You know what I'm saying? And so like
Wow.
when you think about the power of transparency, you think about the power of just proving to people that it's possible. It goes way beyond than just like Instagram likes or amount of views or subscribers. Like that stuff is cool and it helps you, you know, make income, but it doesn't matter as far as impact is concerned. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so it's really good over here. It feels good.
Yeah. I mean, that must be so incredible to have that kind of response from somebody saying that you watching your videos or watching you interact with your children makes them want to become a dad or a better dad or a present dad. Um, what do you see doing as far as, you know, continuing to, of course, document and do the work that you're doing, but um, is your hope to just continue to inspire people to be better dads and to be more present in their role as fathers?
Yeah, so my hope is that you know, family is the greatest unit on earth and you know, the disconnection of family creates despair. So what we hope to do is we equip fathers so that they can love and lead their families into eternity. That's the mission statement. Uh, by equipping fathers, uh, giving hope to mothers and inspiring children, we can once again like reestablish like that family is foundation and that good families matter. You know what I'm saying? So what we're working on and what we've been working on is an e-course that helps. men um, love on their pregnant spouses, partners, or whatever. Um, we give them the breakdown of each month. We tell them exactly what they're going to experience. We tell them how they can be there to be there for mom. What type of things she's experiencing during the pregnancy, and how moods shift and all that type of stuff. And so that's an asset that people will be able to experience, and that will help families connect better, because that's a very sensitive time.
Mm-hmm.
When my wife was pregnant, the first time I was all service. The second time happened right back to back. And so I was kind of like, we didn't even get the chance to debrief. You know what I mean? Like, it was hard the first time. So I kind of want to talk about some things because you were mean, and you know what I mean? And so I needed someone to talk to. I needed someone to coach me.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we want to do is we want to help men transition well into fathers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's incredible. And it's actually interesting. And I was just laughing because I actually didn't even, when I had my daughter, I didn't even think of the fact that, I kind of, you assume that men just kind of step into this role and they don't kind of go through that postpartum period like a woman does, because, you obviously grew the baby and delivered, and your body's going through a whole adjustment of hormones and healing and, breastfeeding and all that. But then when I had my daughter, and I was reading a bunch of books, I started really thinking about that men also go through this adjustment period and also this postpartum period. And it's such an important part of that also, to pay attention to that, change and that shift and the adjustment that, first time fathers step into, of this new role of figuring it out, just like, moms are figuring it out, or, women are adjusting to that. And to be able to have that as a tool that you're offering for men, I think is such an important part of that. Of course, during the pregnancy, to be able to be helpful to a woman, but also to be able to have that community and say to a guy, like, I know this is new and I know this is different, and here's how I can help you.
Yeah. And thank you. Like, and here's the thing, even as the baby is being developed in mama, dad can be experiencing joy, but he's also disconnected.
Right.
So he wants to help, but it's nothing he can do. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like, you're not feeling well. Can I do this? Can I do that? And sometimes you just got to be quiet. But not knowing that and feeling like you're failing because mom's in pain, or mom's experiencing this thing and she doesn't know how to feel, and you are just kind of left to your own emotions. And then when you go to hug mom, there's a baby in between you. And so you realize that, mom's body it's not yours, it's not hers anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's this vessel for life. And so there's such a transitioning happen there. And then all of a sudden the baby comes, and the baby don't want nothing to do with you. You have to really, really fight for connection, and fight for this opportunity in this moment to gain some traction with this child. And it's a lot of work. And so I just want to prepare men for that, because it's just something we don't know. We have no idea it happens, and it happens so fast, and we are just kind of left. Some guys do very well with it, and other guys are just kind of like, man, this is frustrating. You know what I mean? Like, I miss my wife. You know what I mean? Like, she's not mine. And so that can be really hard, and sometimes traumatizing for dads. And so I'd really like to help men transition there.
I think that's so incredible. I just thought of another big part of people's fatherhood journeys, which is, of course, being a stay-at-home dad isn't necessarily what people's traditional view of fathers is. And now, of course, you're a full-time working dad, but also present at home, of course. But when you talk to young men who are about to become fathers, or who are not fathers yet, and maybe there's someone who's 13 years old who says, I never wanted to be a father, and I saw your video and now I want to be a father. And they think, that the idea of being a real man is not being at home, is out providing for their family. The woman stays home and does the child rearing. How do you talk to young men who might have that perception, or might have that understanding, based on maybe their relationship with their own father, of not being at home and being present, and it being a generational thing? How do you talk to men about it being a strong and it being a strength to stay at home and to be a present father?
Well, I don't necessarily promote being a stay-at-home dad as something that everyone should hop into, because
Right.
it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
There's an incredible amount of like mind games that play in your head. You know what I mean? And so it takes a lot of patience and strength, and everyone isn't built for it. So that's not like, hey guys, grow up, be a stay-at-home dad like me. Like I don't do
Mhm.
that, you know.
Yeah.
I do say that presence is most important.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, it's not so much that you got to be perfect. Even being there to apologize, even being there to fail, just to try, uh, is super important. And so a lot of the conversations are about like mostly when I talk to younger men who are fathers, is fighting for their own identity in their own relationship with their child, despite what mom is saying is right or wrong. You know what I mean? And so my homie Kier was telling me about it. I think it's called like parental gatekeeping, where there's like this, you got to do it this way or you don't do it at all. You know what I mean? And so dads need an opportunity to fail. You know what I mean? We need an opportunity to gain some relationship and say, hey, we're going to do it dad's way. You know, I do let a lot of men know that their presence is really all that's necessary, more than like actual gifts and experiences, like just being there to play, being there to wrestle, being there to feed and sleep next to, getting in the crib, like all those moments that you see on the Hallmark, you know, like those things are really, really, really important. And not also filming all of it, you know, and that's something that, you know, it's a struggle, you know what I mean, to get people to understand that like there's so much work that goes behind like being a parent, you know, even like boundaries with grandparents,
Mhm.
you know, like it's far out there. So um I really talk about just being present when you're there.
Mhm.
No phones, just presence.
Yeah, it's so incredible. Thank you so much for talking to me about this. I'm so um, I'm just in awe of what you do, and I loved right when I first saw the movie that came out last year. I just knew that learning more about all that you do and your mission and your goal is something that I wanted to just have be a part of my everyday life because it's just such an incredible topic to talk about and to shine a light on. And of course, all the work that you're doing now just around fatherhood is such a huge gift to the world and to fathers and people who aren't fathers but want to be fathers someday. It's just it's incredible work, and I love watching your little ones. And God bless your wife for being at home with four little ones. I always say to my mom, I'm like, how did you do it with four? It's
Yes,
incredible. It
yes.
requires so much patience. So I'm so grateful that you took time to talk to us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity and getting to know you. And it's so awesome that you're, you know, putting this effort in. You know what I mean? It feels like, you know, you really care and you're about this mission as well. But thank you so much, Catherine. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. And I'm going to put it in the comments, but I also want everybody to go and, of course, see all the amazing work that you're doing on your page and all the amazing work that you're doing also not on your page, but just in the world and in the community in general, because it is making such a huge impact and such a difference. And for men and for women to just want to, you know, see a man like you and see a father like you and a family like you and your wife's family and your four kids. So thank you for all that you do and all the good that you put into the world. And I'm so grateful you took the time today.
Amen. Thank you so much, Catherine. I'll see you
Thank you.
next
Have
time.
a great week. Bye.
You too. Bye.